The Nile River, one of the most legendary waterways in human history. It stretches over 4,100 miles, making it the longest river in the world. But beyond its impressive size, the Nile played a far greater role. It was the very lifeblood of ancient Egypt. Without the Nile, there would be no pyramids, no pharaohs, no civilization as we know it. But how exactly did this river create one of the greatest civilizations in history? Let's find out. Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian, famously called Egypt the gift of the Nile. And he was absolutely right. Surrounded by vast deserts on both sides, Egypt would have been an uninhabitable wasteland if not for the Nile. Each year, like clockwork, the river would flood, bringing nutrient-rich silt from the highlands of Ethiopia. This natural irrigation transformed the arid land into a lush, fertile paradise, perfect for growing crops. These annual floods were predictable, making agriculture in Egypt more reliable than in many other ancient civilizations. While other cultures struggled with unpredictable droughts and floods, Egyptians could count on the Nile to sustain them year after year. The agricultural abundance created by the Nile allowed the Egyptian population to thrive. Wheat and barley became staple crops, while flax was grown to make linen. With a stable food supply, people had the opportunity to specialize in other professions. Artisans, scribes, priests, and architects. This specialization laid the foundation for a structured society, a key element in the rise of civilization. With food surpluses, trade expanded. The Nile became a natural highway, enabling transport between different regions of Egypt. Goods like gold, papyrus, and stone were traded both internally and with neighboring civilizations. The wealth generated by agriculture and trade enabled Egypt to grow into a powerful kingdom. For the ancient Egyptians, the Nile was not just a river, it was a divine force. The god Hapi was worshipped as the deity of the annual floods, ensuring fertility and prosperity. The Nile was also believed to be connected to the afterlife. The east bank of the river, where the sun rises, was associated with life, while the west bank, where the sun sets, was linked to death and the underworld. This is why tombs and pyramids were built on the west side. The river also played a major role in Egyptian mythology. The god Osiris, the ruler of the afterlife, was said to have been killed and thrown into the Nile by his brother Seth. His body parts were scattered, and his wife Isis searched along the riverbanks to gather them. This story symbolized the cycle of death and rebirth, much like the Nile's annual flooding, which brought renewal to the land. The Nile wasn't just a source of food and spiritual meaning, it was the lifeline of Egyptian transportation. Since the river flowed from south to north and the winds blew from north to south, it allowed for easy navigation in both directions. Boats carried everything from food and goods to massive stone blocks used in pyramid construction. Without the Nile, moving these materials across Egypt's vast terrain would have been nearly impossible. Beyond trade and construction, the Nile also helped unify Egypt. In a time when communication was slow and difficult, the river connected Upper and Lower Egypt, enabling a centralized government to emerge. Pharaohs could send messages and armies quickly across the land, strengthening their control over a vast empire. For thousands of years, the Nile sustained Egypt's power, but eventually shifts in climate, political struggles, and foreign invasions weakened the empire. Overuse of land and changes in the flooding patterns made agriculture less predictable. Today, the Aswan High Dam controls the Nile's waters, preventing the natural flooding that once enriched the soil. While this has benefits, such as providing hydroelectric power, it has also led to challenges like soil degradation and reduced fish populations. Still, the Nile remains central to Egypt's identity. It continues to provide water, sustain life, and attract millions of people to its banks. Even in modern times, this ancient river continues to shape the destiny of Egypt. From the first settlers who farmed its banks to the mighty pharaohs who ruled over vast kingdoms, the Nile was more than just a river. It was the heart of an empire. Without it, ancient Egypt would never have existed. Its story is a testament to how geography shapes history, how nature gives rise to civilization, and how the past still flows through the present. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more fascinating stories from the past. Until next time, keep exploring history.